This situation keeps getting crazier as Chris Drury has finally spoken out on what went wrong this season. We're going to get into that, as well as some shocking comments from both Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad on locker cleanout day, and what they had to say about their future with the team and what happened this season will surprise Rangers fans. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, and let me tell you, there is going to be a lot of stuff coming out over the next couple days and weeks with this team as they look for a new head coach and maybe some restructuring of the organization as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. It is free at the end of the day, and you get to stay up to date with your New York Rangers. But let's dive right into it. We have some comments from Chris Drury that I want to get into first about the season that was an absolute disaster this season. And he spoke out about, the ice time issue, the scratches this season, and if he feels that communication needs to be improved. And he went on to say, and this is again from Molly Walker, so thank you, Molly, but he went on to say, again, we're going to look at every single aspect of this. Certainly, I'm always critical of myself and trying to figure out ways to be better, and it starts with me, and I will continue to do that. Now, it starts with him. It doesn't necessarily start with him getting fired. We've learned that over the last couple of days, but it does look like he's going to stick around for at least one more season. We'll see what he does this offseason and how the team performs next season. That's what we got right now. That's what Rangers fans got right now. So as far as players, we've had a few this year talk about ice time or scratches. We certainly want players here who want to play, and we don't want players who are happy being scratched. So I think he's referencing and alluding to, obviously, everything that happened last week with Calvin DeHaan and the fact that he was fired up about not playing. You do like to see that in a player, right? You don't like to see players sitting up in the press box eating popcorn, right? So he went on to say, I know for a fact Lavi is really big on communication and communicated to his players throughout his 2 years here where they stood and why they were out or why they were in and what role they were or weren't in, essentially. And he went on to say, communication is a priority. Being a former player myself, I always like to know where I stood, and we always try to do that with players every single day. This quote, and especially the ending of the quote about the communication part, is going to get very interesting when we dive into some comments later in the video about Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad, what they had to say today in locker cleanout day this morning. But one other quote I wanted to get into from Chris Drury, and this is from Zibanejad. We'll get to that in a second. But from Chris Drury, he said, quite simply, we fell short across the board. Nobody here takes it lightly. We know, and clearly not. I mean, they just fired Peter Laviolette, and it looks like some of the other coaching staff could be going with him besides the goaltending coaching staff. Now, went on to say, we know our fans are frustrated, and they deserve a better season than this. It starts with me. I need to do a better job and give the staff and players the opportunity to succeed. And I think that Chris Drury made some decent moves this season. I feel like Peter Laviolette didn't know how to manage them. And again, this is going to get very interesting when we get into some comments from Chris Kreider, because we can get into that right now. And I mean, one thing that was thrown around out there this morning is what Chris Kreider was dealing with all season. And he said that he spent the first half of the year figuring out his back problem. We all know that he was dealing with a back problem. That was the thing that we thought was, bothering him all season, right? We knew about the back problem since the beginning. Then he had a quote-unquote weird illness that went to my inner ear and caused vertigo coming out of the Christmas break. So obviously not going to have a fun time playing hockey with vertigo. Almost impossible if you can't keep your balance. So that's certainly something that is going to affect you. So we didn't know about that. And the other thing that we didn't know about, and this is new information and really confuses me as to why Peter Laviolette was continuing to play this player, is once he felt like he was back in a rhythm, Kreider suffered a hand injury in the first game back from the Four Nations faceoff. Now, the other thing that we learned this morning in terms of the injury is that he's going to need surgery on his hand to repair whatever happened to it, which he injured in a game against Buffalo after the Four Nations break. And he's going to need surgery. He may need surgery. It's looking like he's going to need surgery in the offseason to repair whatever this is. Why was Peter Laviolette playing a player that wasn't playing well to begin with all season? And it's not his fault. He's dealing with a back injury. He had the ear infection, all that stuff. Why is he still playing a player that is ineffective, hurt, and sick? Why is that happening? Over guys who are younger, probably hungrier, and were probably playing better at the time, like Brandon Othman, let's say, for example. So and a Brett Berard at the time, right? Earlier in the season. Very confusing. But nonetheless, I mean, Peter Laviolette's gone at this point. We don't have to worry about that. We have to look towards next season. But very odd in that way. And again, this is not just from one insider. Like Vince had this as well. Colin Stevenson, Molly Walker, all saying the same thing. It sounds like he will require off-season surgery. He also said that he was dealing with vertigo at one point. Yes, so very interesting stuff. And again, I have to share the sentiment from Joe here that, you know, can someone please explain why Laviolette was playing 2 injured players all season, because it gave them the best chance to win. It didn't. It didn't. You should have been playing your younger, more hungrier players. We'll get to Shesterkin's comments in a second. But let me know in the comments what you think about Chris Kreider's season and his injury. He didn't have the greatest season. We know that. He was dealing with a bunch of injuries. Some of it is out of his control, but why was he getting into games and situations where he wasn't going to be able to produce? Really blows my mind. Absolute failure on everyone's part. Now, I wanted to get into what Mika Zibanejad said this morning. He said, I think there was frustration. I think it's just when you don't know everything, we don't know what's going on. And this quote is alluding to what happened last offseason with Barclay Goodrow and what happened earlier this season with Jacob Trouba. And he was saying that there was a lot of frustration and a lot of the players had it top of mind, and it was a distraction this year. And that's what he said this morning at Locker Cleanout Day. And now I do have to share the sentiment now with Phil that it doesn't matter what is going on around you. This is the NHL. Players get traded. Your friends are going to get traded. Everybody should know that. That shouldn't distract you from the thing at hand. And we were talking about this earlier this season. A lot of people were thinking that the way that Chris Drury handled some of these exits for these players that had no movement clauses was unethical. But at the same time, a GM is going to do everything in his power to try and make his team better. And the players on his team need to continue to do their job. And that's Mika Zibanejad's job, to play hockey. And everybody else on this team that we know that a lot of them quit. Now, I said a couple of days ago, I hate saying that players quit. I hate saying that. But some of the players on this team look like they quit this season. Now, Chris Kreider, with some more information we do know, I wouldn't say that he quit on the team, but he certainly wasn't put in a position to succeed, and the team wasn't put in a position to succeed either. So just an absolute failure of a season on all, like they're talking about communication, Chris Drury is. This looks like a lack of communication, and I think that a lack of direction too for the players, because the players should not be worried about what the GM is doing. Focus on your own game, focus on winning games. I mean, if you come to the rink every day and you're like, oh man, who's going to get traded next, or this and that, like I'm sure Drury was kind of, communicating a little bit to them. And even if he didn't give them the full story, he doesn't really have to. It's not their job, right? They're not the assistant GM. They are players on the team. You need to focus on your game. So let me know what you think about those comments too. It seemed like a lot of the players were very distracted this season, and that's just something that cannot go on to next season. I mean, it can't. And there's going to be a new leadership group in place, starting with the coach, the head coach, that is. It could be, other assistant coaches. We don't know what's going to happen with Michael Pekka. We don't know if he's going to return either. So that's going to be something we keep an eye on as well. So just an absolute mess of a season. I'm going to cover more that's coming out from Locker Cleanout Day as well, because there's a lot of quotes. Chris Drury still has to speak again, so that's going to happen. I'm sure he's going to speak out on what he's thinking for the head coach position. So stick around for that. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.